um, well, actually, in the first gathering that we did in Argentina in 2011, when I started to embody one of those guides that were aliens, they call everybody our ancestors. So, like grandfathers and grandmothers from Earth. And everyone were like, what does it mean? And for myself, it was also like, why is he calling us, or she calling us ancestors? So that got stuck there in that story. And many, many years after, I started to remember many stories about exactly that. And I could go into that story, like if I am allowed to tell a tale.
Tell the
that
tale.
could be that could be a lie. But that's what I remember. So there is this civilization that is called the Trevet. To picture the Trevet is like, a, the Triceratops, the dinosaur. So Triceratops, yeah, kind of like that, but without horns. So kind of like that. So these beings called Trevet, they are not from this galaxy. They usually travel in between galaxies, and the way they do it is entering a blue cube of energy. So it's like a weird thing of a cube where it does like this, and suddenly you are in another world. So we call that protecta at that time. So they are the only ones that can use that energy without being harmed or without just becoming dust, let's say, or energy. So they travel from one world to the other, trying to bring this information that they have. And what they do actually is to basically prepare planets that are in the path of evolution. And what they do is to correct some of the geometrical shapes so the portals can flow better. And that's part of their job. The first time that I saw them, I was living in a planet called Gludok. And I was this being 3 meters tall with long head. And I was the secretary of someone that was organizing meetings. And so I was called by someone and said, the Trevets are here. And I was like, oh my gosh, they are never here. Why they came? So I went to my boss and I told him, the Trevets are here. And so we needed to organize something very quick. So the reason why they were there is because another species were taking over some of their planets. And they said, we have to bring the cube into the origin. So we have to hide it in a place where they could never go because it's in the past. So they cannot touch it. So we have to hide it in time. And the whole discussion was, where is that origin? So we all went to the agricultures of worlds in Orion constellation. The agricultures of worlds are beings with many arms and hands that what they do is to harvest DNA of different worlds, and they organize it in rays of light. So what they do is to, because we physically cannot move from one planet to the other, what they do was to sow ourselves in different planets through the precession of the equinoxes. So depending on which planets we're moving according to the constellations. So you need planets that are specifically aligned with their own planets. So in a cycle of thousands of years, what they do is to download a specific ray of light, which is a DNA code, but the planet needs to be pointed to a specific direction. So it takes thousands of years until you download one code. We call it evolution, but they call it agriculture. So what we did there was to ask what is the place that can hold all the information of all the ones that are here in the meeting. And it took us all to here, Earth. And they call it the origin. So we have to go back to the origin and to bring this information, download the cube, and spread it throughout the precession of the equinoxes. And that's something that today the cultures call the Rainbow Bridge. Have you heard about that? The Rainbow Bridge. So the Rainbow Warriors, the Rainbow Bridge. It's downloading for millions of years codes of people that cannot travel physically to our planet, but they can travel through light and being born in this reality through modifying DNA. So these people were downloaded here for millions of years so they could build the structure for that cube to be downloaded in this planet. So for billions of years, we have been trying to create that cube here so we could anchor that in the origin of all of them. So we could protect that energy, the blue energy. So for millions of years, we have been creating a planet where all the other constellations from the future could be together living in the past to take care of that. And that's a short story of billions of years of story that could take me to many other branches. But that's kind of the core of something that I wanted to say, which is them from other worlds created our past so they could exist in the future.
Your fall style forecast?
So basically, we are the ancestors of all of them at the same time that they created us for us to be unified. Because one of the main reasons why this conflict is happening in the constellation of Orion in the future is because we spread from this planet being divided. Like, imagine like the wars we have today, the West, the East, or I don't know, these conflicts that we have between every planet. So imagine that in the future, and not very far away, thanks to Elon, the first humans will leave the planet and not come back. So imagine if it's another competition, like brothers and sisters trying to reach worlds to see who is better. So project that into millions of years in evolution. Eventually, that's Star Wars. So what we are watching in the movies is actually our future, constantly. So what in the future is saying is put them all together, unify the poison and create medicine. Because the earth is just a cell, but a cell that can become cancer. So it can spread everywhere. And that's why we have to unify everything. Because each one of us is a code in the DNA. So if we don't tie all the DNA together, whatever gets out of this planet in the next 10 to 100 years will be spread in the entire galaxy in the next 3 million years.
No pressure. No pressure.
And we have only 4 years to get ready.
We have 4 years to get ready.
Before Apophis crosses between the moon and the earth.
What does that mean?
It's a virus.
It's a virus.
Yes.
Okay, expand on that.
Expand on that. So the thing is that that so many stories. The thing is that I don't know if you have heard, but in 2029, and that's why we have been preparing for. In 2029, an asteroid that is potentially able to destroy us is going to cross between the Earth and the Moon, which is the closest that we have been from something like in the dinosaurs' time. So it's not going to crash. That's good. But it means that it will cross inside our magnetical field, which is like a virus coming inside. And the scientists name it Apophis, which means the god of death, talking about death, the Egyptian god of death. So it means that we have to rethink about what are we going to do, because we have to transform our reality. And this is like the first call. The second call will be 2036. And the third call will be 2060 something, 69 or 68. So the third call, it might hit us. And when that happens, it means that some people might survive here, but mostly will survive those who left the planet. So who's going to leave the planet? Or what are we going to do with that? So in the next 50 years, we have to think about, or next 30 years, we have to start thinking about what is Earth going to expand in the universe. And the virus of Apophis is like the first call. It's like COVID, but in a spiritual way. It's going to be like a remembrance of something that we did in the past before 65 million years ago, which was, and one of the timelines that was supposed to be for this planet, and someone from the future changed that course so we could exist today. So that could happen again with another species. 65 million years ago, the world was supposed to be for the reptilians. Do you know them? Have you heard about them? The reptilians were supposed to be in ruling this planet according to the path of evolution of this planet. But a tiny little rock changed everything, and we are here. So we took over the control of this planet. So that's an echo of something that happened in the future, which is we need to change the course of history. Otherwise, the reptilians will be the ones in charge. But we all have the reptilians within ourselves, in the reptilian brain. So we are in this constant inner fight between the reptilian brain and the mammal brain. And it's like the mammal brain trying to control the reptilian one. But even though we live through the reptilian, because we all want to eat, we all want to sleep, and we all want to fuck, I think. So the holy trinity of needs. Yeah. So the holy trinity of needs, which is the reptilian brain. So because we have that very awakened, so it's a remembrance that we need to find balance between the reptilian and the mammal. So we could spread medicine, like make the alchemy of the potentialities of this planet to spread medicine instead of poison. Because right now we are poison for everyone, for the entire system. So the first time that people from the future changed the course of history in order to correct that, it was ending the dinosaurs. And now we are receiving a second call, which is the first call will be in 4 years. So in the next 30 years, we have to figure out the way for the entire planet, the entire humanity, to transform itself into medicine. So yeah, it's not enough responsibility into medicine. Otherwise, after that, the next ones will take over. And we'll try to do it in another way.
So many of us listening may be like, oh, I already had enough to worry about. This is overwhelming. Come on, man. But actually, we can bring it back down to the personal. And, one of the things that you've talked about is repairing some of the patterns in the stories. And you've referenced like the story of Cain and Abel. So for those of you who don't know the story of Cain and Abel, they were brothers. And they were two brothers. And Abel gave first-rate sacrifices to the divine. Jordan Peterson describes it as he gave his best to the highest. He was devoted to giving his best to the highest, and he was rewarded and blessed by Great Spirit, by many names. But he was rewarded for that. And his brother Cain gave second-rate sacrifices, and this is according to the biblical texts. And so he was not rewarded by the divine. His flock wasn't healthy. His family and his partnerships and all of that were all in somewhat shambles. So instead of aspiring to be and working with his brother, one day when his brother had his back turned to him, he took a rock and he smashed it on his head, and he destroyed the ideal and actually severed the relationship of brother to brother. And so one of the things that I think, you've imprinted on me that we're here to do is that's one story that we're here to repair. We're here to repair the story of Cain and Abel. We're here to repair the story of how brothers can work together. And if another brother is thriving, we don't seek to destroy out of our own jealousy. We seek to learn and aspire to be more like them and actually cooperate and assist and serve, that greater thing. So that seems like one thing that if this all seems overwhelming, that can have cosmic significance if we're able to do that, if we're able to repair the story of brotherhood or repair the story of sisterhood. In both of these, they have different types of stories. And these things are part of the teshuvah, as the Kabbalist lineage would say, the repair of these aspects of consciousness.
Hey, if your partner is being secretive with their phone, you need to do this now. Most people are.
Yeah, basically, the first law of the universe, as for sure many of you know, it's mentalism, which means that mind is what creates everything. But it's not our mind. It's the mind we are all together. Like even the plants, everything has mind, which is connectivity. The connection between different aspects, positive and negative, that creates a link of energy that creates mind. So everything in the universe is mind. It doesn't mean that someone is thinking, but it's mind. Which means that everything in the universe doesn't actually exist unless you have a perception of it. So the universe created by billions of years of practice, different options of perceiving those things that doesn't actually exist. So in our way of seeing that is that through mind, we have been creating a map. And that map designs subconscious. What is subconscious? Is all the binary code that we all have inside that allows us to see reality. We don't even think about it. But our brain is constantly processing information that doesn't exist to make sense of it. Like the colors or the people that you are seeing right now, or us here, the rays of light, it doesn't actually exist. It's all a perception of your brain trying to make sense of radiation and things that are happening very fast. So if we take a look into that, subconscious is the first story. Is the first story that we tell ourselves in order to try to perceive reality. Then we have unconsciousness, which is the map that we design in that subconscious. And then we have consciousness, which is the player, the one that says, oh, now that I know the map, I will try to figure out ways to escape from the map or to use the map or to build something different. So we are mammals, which means that we design our unconsciousness through sharing. And the first thing we shared was a story of a guy that was more like a monkey that jumped from a tree and said, water there. I step on a rock when finding water. And everyone will tell, oh, he stepped on the rock finding water. So then nobody will see that rock, but everyone will think that when they see a rock, they will step on it. So we created a map of telling a story of something that could happen when actually won't happen, but we created that design. And imagine that the first time that a guy came and told us the story of how he found that water became our inspiration to look for another well of water. So we designed in our map, in our head, how to find it. So then it got more complicated. It said, the water is not just behind that tree, because that tree can disappear. But if you follow that star, the star will be always there. And you just follow that star and you will find the well of water. So we created an idea, an imaginary of the universe guiding us in the map. During millions of years, we have been designing in our brain the ways we are today. And we don't think about it. But for millions of years, our ancestors, which are in our blood, has told us stories that became part of our subconscious. And we operate through those stories. So while I was saying how the people in other stars said, where is the origin? We have to go back to the origin to try to change something because we are having problems here. So imagine for us, which one is the story that originated our way of thinking. So the poison is in our minds, and it's encoded in a story that someone told us and we believed it. So we have to find that story in the stories we tell ourselves all the time, in the stories we have read, in the movies, in the path of the hero, in the stories of mythology, legends, every tradition. They all weaved until we find the first one. So it doesn't matter in which culture you are, there is a clue that connects you to the origin, to the main story, the first one. And usually it takes us all to the moment when we left the tree because the fruit was rotten. Remember that story? The forbidden fruit. So for some people, the fruit was rotten and people started to die. We had to leave. For others, they didn't eat the whole tree, the whole fruit. They just ate a portion of it and they got a psychedelic trip. So instead of poison, became medicine. And some people started to create another story. So what is the origin of all the stories that we have told ourselves that keeps us fighting for something, for survival, of mistrusting the others? So what is the origin? What is that story? And for that, we have to actually go to the stories that we have been told when we were kids, like in school or our parents. Those are the first stories. And from there, the books that we read, the stories that we've been told, and the stories of humanity, like mythology or religion, they're all stories. Even if it's true or a lie, it's real for the brain. So it doesn't matter if someone is telling you a lie. Your brain is trying to process it as a part of the truth. So all of that, it's encoded in our subconscious. And that's why it's so important for us, the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we've been told, and the stories we tell to others. Those stories are the ones that have weaved the structure of our planet. So when we project ourselves into other worlds, what are the stories that we are going to project? That's why the first thing we have to do is to heal our relationship with the stories that we told ourselves. And from there, we can start rewiring our brain. And I think that the next 30 years, we have to rethink all the stories that we've been told in order to not to project Star Wars, let's say.
Open a Chime checking account in 2 minutes and we'll spot you up to $200. Install the Chime app today.
they will actually pay you for just playing their games. There's this app called Just Play.
So what we're doing here in Fit for Service is we're telling a new story, and we're living a new story. And this new story is an invitation about what is possible. And, you know, to even hear reflected from Chase and all of the other brothers who've come in, and they have their own stories in their own ways. They've gotten to learn from this story. And in talking to them, it's given them more faith in a global story, a new story for a new humanity that can tell of a different way, can tell of a bunch of strangers that have come together and are already, you know, we're at the center point of this, becoming Ohana, becoming family through these transformational processes, through these initiatic rituals. And so, you know, one of the great tasks that I think all of us have an invitation for is, how do we tell a new story? And not only tell it with our words, but tell it with our actions, tell it with how we live. And this story will not only be told or shared on social media, but it will be uploaded to the great record keeper, you know, the Akash, the stories of all time and all humanity. And so even if we don't make it, this story of how at least some people came together and lived in a different way is possible. And so all of us have this opportunity to be messianic or prophetic in creating a new story, to flip over the tables. You know, there's a famous story of Yeshua who came and flipped the tables over in the temple. And the way I like to look at that story is, he looked at the temple and the tables were all upside down and the legs were pointing up. And so people think he went in and made a mess, but actually he was like, hey, their tables are upside down. Like, let's flip them over and turn them the right way. And they're like, no, you can't do that. You know, we need the legs pointing upwards. And he's like, no, for sure not. And that opened up a pathway, you know, that opened up a way that actually paved a way. And, you know, we haven't done the greatest job following that way, that truth, that life as a collective humanity. And in that origin story has been corrupted in many ways, but we all have the chance to tell a new story. And so even when these things get galactic and we start talking about, you know, different cosmic events that are happening, like, all of the stories that we're telling will be part of the record that will echo through the halls of eternity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the tiniest of the story